Yo, what up, everyone? Welcome back to the Made Hoops podcast. I am your host, Austin Smith. And as you can see, I'm joined with my good fellas, Eric Hampford and Rob Noonan, bringing you all episode number 15 of the incredible Made Hoops podcast. Once again, hey, we're excited to be back on board. And as you all know, the summertime is wrapping up. We're in the month of June right now, and there's been a lot of good basketball being played, especially now in the high school divisions in regards to the live periods. And so this time of year is pretty unique because high school players are now getting a chance to show off their talents in front of college coaches in the month of June. And that wasn't something we've seen in previous years up until last year. So Eric, I want to ask you this first. What do you think the impact is in regards to players' developments and in terms of, you know, them getting chances? How has this June live periods made an impact in player growth and what you've seen in travel basketball?
I think it's obviously nice that it gives guys the opportunity. Anytime you're giving guys the opportunity to be seen additionally and have opportunities for college coaches to see them, that's a plus, right? Obviously, there's some reconfiguring of the schedule that still needs to be figured out in terms of now with the transfer portal being what it is. We need to figure out how to retool that time early in the spring where college coaches can have guys on campus who are going to be transferring and then still getting out and seeing people in April too. I think that's going to be a massive undertaking and figuring out how to make that work for everybody, but the kids deserve it at the end of the day. So that's a whole other story for another day. But like I said, anytime kids get to be seen, I look at that as a plus. I think it's nice that in June they get some time with their high school teams, which there's always a power struggle between the grassroots teams and the high school teams and who's getting reps with who. And it's nice that they have that chance before July starts where you're seeing them move back with their grassroots teams for circuit championships, things of that nature. So I like the ability to see them in a team setting versus kind of like the individual showcase setting, which we kind of sometimes see with grassroots teams. They're playing a different fit, right? Every high school sometimes has a different fit for where this player plays with their high school team versus their grassroots team.
Love it. Love it. Rob, how about you, man? Talk to us. What do you think is notable now that we got these June live periods going on?
It's always good that the kids are staying ready, and there's just such a big difference mentally between playing in front of coaches versus not playing in front of coaches.
Right.
So that's number one, is like that's what prepares them to keep them ready to go into July. And it's 2 weeks away, 2 weeks difference. So like they're very, very prepared going into that aspect. But depending, I mean, you could have some watered down basketball just because of kids either transferring high schools that haven't made a decision yet. Either that transferred high schools to a different region. So now you're not watching a kid who would normally be in the Northeast that would be at this tournament, or you would have some kids at Team USA. So
yeah,
you have some variations where, and you have that in grassroots too. It's not like, I mean, you have kids bounce around teams all the time, but they're still going to be in the event with some other team. Sometimes if a kid, you know, is putting his name in the high school transfer portal and hasn't made his decision yet, you might not watch him for that weekend. But I mean, it's for the high school side, they're playing in much more structure, and it's still an enjoyment to watch. And, you know, being in the gym with college coaches just brings such a different energy, no matter what kind of event you're in. It's just totally different.
Yeah. And I think too, to your point, because we've all seen summer basketball for years, and it sometimes can get a little bland just solely because, you know, maybe the best players aren't playing, or maybe, you know, this team didn't want to bring their varsity team, so they brought some JV guys up. But now that college coaches are there, you can definitely tell the environment is changing, and it gives a different type of edge to that June live period, and then high school basketball in the summer as well. Rob, we're going to talk to you about some of the events you were able to go to and check out during June, but I want to ask you this question, and I think it's pretty unique. Now that we know we got the final finale coming up for the 8th grade, right? And during this high school period in June, when some of these 8th graders have the chance to play with some of their high school teams, they're technically playing up in a sense. I mean, they're going to 9th grade at the 14U level specifically. What do you think it does for their game as like some of these 14 players heading to the 8th grade finale? How do you think it'll affect their game, possibly getting a chance to play with other high school players in the chance in July? Because we know at the 8th grade level too, like when they're not playing scrubs, like we know that the 14U finale is going to be obviously best of the best in the country, but still playing with older players during the month of June, doesn't that have to have some sort of impact in the development as well?
It definitely helps the development. I mean, you went right up my alley because now I have to name drop a few 2026. It's like, that's my favorite part. So it does help them. I mean, you have some kids that have played up in 15 or 16 EYBL, which also helps them. So some of them are already prepared, but I mean, they haven't played in front of 40 coaches. Because you play at 15U, E15, you'll have a few coaches, but you're not having 40 wrapped around, no matter what team you are. I mean, even session 1 in Orlando, watching Cooper Flag and watching the Boozers and Knight Riders and Maine United, you maybe had 10 coaches max, and that was just throughout the day. So seeing them, like Ikenna Alozie for Camden, I mean, he was just balling. You had Julius Event with Bergen Catholic. You had Chidi Wigwe, who's with Bergen Catholic. Bergen Catholic has a tremendous freshman class. Once they add AJ Williams, who was in a boot last week, will be cleared soon. You had Patrice Feemster, who was playing with Springside Chestnut Hill at the Mid-Atlantic shootout. Eric, I saw Drew Correo, who's now like 6'8".
Jeez.
I love that.
So you had some kid. I mean, you had Munchie playing up with Newman Goretti. There were a ton of kids. St. John's College. Pat had a ton of our dudes from Devin Totley, Chase Foster, Zion Chase. He had Jeremy Clark, Finley Billy. I mean, wow. You just
they got the whole squad.
Yeah, they really had the whole squad. So like, there were so many kids that you saw that would come up and like nudge me on the shoulder. I'd be like, "Ah, man, I love 8th grade basketball. Like, I love seeing these guys go up and starting varsity."
I think what that speaks to in general too is this time of year you start to see a page turned, right? Like what we see in November from some of these guys.
Right.
Fast forward to July, there's a new confidence, right? Like they've grown, they're maturing. Then in June, they start playing with their high school team and playing against seniors. Right. All of a sudden, you're getting a new version of them from where they started at the beginning of their 8th grade year. And I think that's the one thing that really is permeating from all of those guys when we see them at 8th grade finale, when we go to Midwest MSA camp at the end of July, in August, you start to really see a brand new version of them. And it all starts from, hey, the journey started here at the beginning of your year, and now we're going to start to move you up. You were the king of the castle as an 8th grader, middle school. Now, as the school year goes on, it's like, all right, now it's time to turn it up. Now you're the lowest man on the totem pole again. Some of those guys, they're talented enough where they're not only getting reps, but they're starting. And some of them, it's a little bit more of a rocky experience, but they're finding themselves and figuring out where they fit in with their high school programs. And then they're bringing that back to us with their travel teams where they're confident in, hey, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm going. And I think they feel a little bit more secure in where they're at in their journey for the most part.
Some kids played very, very fast, which was uncharacteristic for their game. So, I mean, they settled down, but like you watch some of these kids and you're like, they would never do that with this team.
At the end of the day, they're still, regardless of what they look like, while some of them are 6'8", 6'9", 220, they're still 14 years old, 14, 15 years old, depending. So it's like they're still insecure in who they are. They're still trying to figure this out too. And like you said, you start putting college coaches in the gym. That's an added pressure to it, right? So I think it's throwing them into the fire, and now they kind of settle in. And now when they get to 8th grade finale and we do have some high major coaches come through the gym, it's like, okay, this isn't new to me. Right. I've had some of these experiences in June. So I think that's what the biggest thing is. It's a newfound confidence and just them having some new experiences and starting their new journey as high school prospects.
And you got to expect that the competition level is going to be even greater now. And again, like that's a really good point too. Like both of you guys mentioned how now with the college coaches being around, that's not really phasing the player. So you may not see as many turnovers. You may not see as many jitters. You may not see guys as sped up as they are now, like you said, Rob, in high school, because I know even when I played back in the day, like it's a different ball game. You might be playing, you know, with some of the top in the country, 8th grade, but still like having that other player who has maybe 1 or 2 years of varsity experience, possibly even 3 if they played as a sophomore, 4 if they played as a freshman. It just really depends now, just ultimately on who you're going up against and what school you're playing. But nevertheless, those 8th graders will have a chance to have a better July and be better just because of how they played in June. Rob, I do want to go back to you again just to touch a little bit more on both of the events you were at. Let's talk about it, man. I mean, you had Philly Live, you had the Mid-Atlantic Shootout. What were some other takeaways that you probably took from those events? And were there any players that stood out that caught your attention as well?
So the name trending from this past weekend, which I tweeted about twice, which then I noticed I tweeted about him twice, so I had to throw in some other tweets. I was playing some favoritism with Rob Wright from Newman Goretti. And they still have Kafik Myers. They have Amir Williams. They have Rob Wright's younger brother, Munchie Wright, who's a rising 9th grader. I mean, this was the first time I saw him. So I go into the game and I'm like, all right, I've never watched Rob before. I've only watched Kafik. So this is my first time watching Rob, and I'm like, okay, let's see what he's about. This dude was getting boxed and won, still hitting threes. I'm looking around. I started actually laughing because he was scoring so much. I'm like, this is insane. Like, I've seen tweets, and then I'm like, the first thing I do is go to the rankings, and I'm like, all right, like, no way he's not a top 5 guard in the class.
Wow.
He was unbelievable.
That's what he was doing in EYBL too. Like, it was like he's a professional bucket getter, man. Like, he scores around the rim and it doesn't make sense. Like, guys his size usually aren't able to do some of the things he does. And I think it's like every time somebody new sees him, they become a believer, right? You're like hesitant. And you're like, oh, is he really like, is that just like a Philly bias? Is it this? And then it's like every weekend there's somebody new who's like, okay, I've seen Robert Wright and it makes a ton of sense. Like, I'm a believer now.
He's going to be hooping till like he's 60 and like not like
got the angles, man. He knows how to play the angles.
Yeah, like he can just score. I mean, Friday night, Xavier Brown played outstanding. He usually plays on the ball. He played a ton off the ball, probably hit 5 threes until somebody finally got a hand in his face. And he was still making shots. As far as the Mid-Atlantic shootout, you were looking at Thomas Haw, he was a 22 last year. Now he's a 23. And last year I tweeted about him. I'm like, his stock's rising. Obviously going to pat myself on the back. And he's a tough dude. I mean, he hits a ton of shots. If I were to compare him to somebody right now, he gives off Reed Bailey vibes from Expressions, who's committed to Davidson and is now there. Same type of player. I want to say Thomas is way more tougher. Like, he'll get in your skin. Like, if you watch him like around the court, like he's nudging people, and I'm like, God, like he's annoying me, but I love it. Like keep doing what you do. And then going back to this weekend with Philly Live 2, Aaron Bradshaw's been unbelievable. I mean, the fact that he hasn't broken a backboard or a rim is like actually impressive. So shout out to Jefferson U for having these sturdy backboards and rims, because he is ripping the rim off. Nick Lewis, who is a 2025, played with Takeover, still with Takeover on their 16U team.
Very good 16U group, by the way. Not surprising, but Takeover's 16U team is loaded.
He's playing for Gonzaga. He's tremendous. He'll be a high major player through and through. I'm actually excited to see what he amounts to and what high major school he eventually picks when he gets there. And then I found 2 hidden gems in Jersey, which I was mad. I was mad at one, wasn't mad at the other because I've seen him. Nasir Hart, who was originally from Keyport, 6'7". He's got the tools. He's playing for Rio on the grassroots side. So, I mean, Mike Rice is going to develop him like Mike Rice has done in the past with all the guys that he's developed. He's now at St. Thomas Aquinas under Coach Turco. And then the one I was mad about was a 6'6", 2026 from Jersey, who I didn't know about. So I'm sprinting across the court to get this kid's info. And I'm like, why don't I know you? I'm looking at the coach because he plays for Rutgers Prep. So I was like, Matt Bloom, I'm like, why didn't he come to camp? Why didn't nobody tell me about him? Jaden Tian. So he played with the Roadrunners, with Sandy. This dude, he's got some skills that I was watching in warmups. Again, you don't take too much lightly from warmups, but being a rising ninth grader and doing some of the stuff that he was doing and some of like the natural feel and handle, and he played a lot of minutes too. Like he was a little bit overwhelmed defensively just because so much is coming at him, and he should be able to block this shot and that shot, so that stuff will come to him. But that was what I saw this weekend. I mean, there was a lot of good basketball. And I'm always proud seeing my 2026s play up and doing some stuff.
Good stuff. Well, let me say this. I mean, you know, they have the opportunity to compete at a high level in middle school, and yes, it's a jump going to high school, but however, they've got a little edge playing some of the best already, so they go into it well seasoned, for sure about that. Let me ask you all this last question. As we get into the month of July, we know that July is going to be an incredible month. What are you two individually looking the most forward to?
I mean, I guess you could take that several different ways. I love July. Not only for 8th grade finale. I love the environment in Augusta. It's the capital of the basketball world for that 1 week with Peach Jam, the 8th grade finale. I just love seeing the growth, man. I love seeing kids at Peach who are killing it. And I remember what they looked like as scrawny 8th graders doing it down the road at the convention center with us. And to me, that's the biggest thing, is these kids staying the course and, you know, continuing to get better, understanding what they need to do to ultimately get to that level. And that's why I love that we have 8th grade finale in Augusta, because it gives the chance to, when they're not playing, go over to Peach Jam and see their older programs and get a chance to really envision themselves at that level, whether it's E15s, E16s, 17s under the bright lights with all the coaches. Like, hey, if you guys continue to do what you do, like, this could be you. I love that. And I just love the ability to give these guys the chance to close the summer on a bang, right? Like some of these guys and I'm talking specifically the high school kids, right? Like some of these guys in April, they're coming onto the scene for the first time where people are really learning who they are. You really want to close out the summer strong. So I'm trying to see like which of these guys aren't really sleepwalking as they end the summer. It's, hey man, this is the time when you really got to like keep your foot on the gas and end your summer on a high note, try and pick up some more additional offers and keep this thing going.
Appreciate that. Rob, talk to us.
Speaking to that, I mean, some of these kids will just be exhausted from Pango's camp to High School Live to Team USA to NBA Top 100.
It's not easy. I know it's not easy when I say it. Like, it's hard to keep your foot on the gas. Like
Eric's making it seem like he could go play for, 30 days straight right now, which is just
bro.
great.
I get tired just watching these kids. I say that all the time.
Well, Eric calls me on his walk every morning, going up the same hill, gasping for air, and he's acting like he's going to go out for 30 days and get buckets.
Give me the opportunity.
Honestly, what was the question?
No, the question is, man, July's a big month. What are you most looking forward to?
I think one thing that the kids missed out on last year was actually going to Peach and watching. So I want to say Peach was probably at like 50% capacity of what it really could have been. So that will be very cool. And that might energize the kids to come back to finale and play harder if they're going in between games. Seeing just like the whole entire atmosphere of finale is so different. And then ending the year with Midwest MSA is always my favorite camp. I like East Coast MSA, but there's a different energy when it comes to Midwest, where you're getting kids nationally from everywhere. Eric knows it. It's summertime sadness usually for me, but when it's Midwest MSA, I'm like, let's go.
Yeah, no, it's Midwest MSA is different, and it's going to be loaded again. So that's your little plug right there for everyone to understand what they're walking into at the end of July. Like, it's going to be a high level event.
I love it. Listen, as you can tell, the events stack up more and more. So do not let your foot up the gas. Like he said earlier, like now is not the time to do that for all you players tuned in, hanging with us right now. I'm looking forward to it, man. I'll be tapped in from afar because my July is about to get super duper like crazy. But just know, man, like I'm following along. I'm watching tweets. I'm on Instagram. Like shout out to all the people on the creative side for Made Hoops on social media. Y'all are killing it right now. Y'all are killing it. I'm tapped in.
John Eisenman and company.
Yes.
Man, they best in the business. They do what they do. Fellas, I appreciate y'all's insight, man. June is definitely becoming more and more unique with the live period in high school ball. And it makes the games better because I can remember high school game. I mean, Summer League was always interesting because and it's like you play in June, but then you don't play like team high school basketball until October, November in like a game structure setting. You might play fall ball, but that's not like your regular in-season stuff. So it's definitely got more competitive, and I think that makes the game even better. So, yeah, that's that. And I appreciate you guys for providing y'all's input today. Everyone, thanks for tapping in to episode number 15 of the Made Hoops podcast. As you know, we had Eric, Hampford, and Rob.
Hold on. You forgot the NBA draft.
Oh, listen. We got to talk NBA draft. Listen, we do. We got a lot of players that played through the Made platform that came through and have now gotten the opportunity to play at the highest level, as we know, of professional basketball. And we'll start with this first before we cut on that. What is it like for you? You see players from beginning to end. Getting them to college is one thing. Seeing an eighth grader going to college is one, but seeing them go through college, and now we're talking about being a part of association. What's your personal perspective on that?
I mean, I love it from the standpoint of this is what these guys dream about from the time they're, before we get, to see them in our events. Like some of these guys have been thinking about this since they were 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. This is what their, moment of, hey, this is the grand stage for me is to shake the commissioner's hand. And we all know that that's just the beginning of that next journey then, and it's staying in the league. But everyone wants to be drafted. Anyone who picks up a basketball when they're in the backyard or at the gym shooting, and they're imagining, getting to shake the commissioner's hand and be the number one pick and do this and do that. So it's really cool just to see not only the kids, but their families get a chance to experience something that so few people get to experience. It's just an awesome moment. And I think that's one thing anyone who works in this business, who gets to work with these kids and you meet so many different people and families and good people that you want them to succeed. It's great to have that moment. It's corny to say, but you have that moment with them, right? When you're watching on TV and you see them, celebrating, it's like, hey, it's cool that you were a part of the journey and that you got to have a little piece of that journey with you and see it. So that's what I love about it. And I'm sure Rob would agree as well.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was about to ask Rob. Rob, how do you think, or not even how do you think, why is Made such a great platform for these young players to help them on their journey? Because, I mean, obviously, the stars you see in the NBA that are getting drafted, they all started from somewhere. They played graphic travel basketball. But specifically, how is Made continuing to give players an advantage as they develop over the years in their basketball career?
We speak by the numbers. Eric, how many drafted did we have last year?
That's a good question. Not as many as we did this year. I think every year we've had more. And
so that's my thing is like, we're just more the platform that we have, more people are gravitating towards. We had 15 this year, right? E?
Yep.
And then, Eric looked at the mock draft for next year and we have 30 kids on that list. So you're doubling every year until there's a point where you really can't double and you just, swing for the fences and hit 100%.
Every draftee is a Made Hoops alumni. That's the goal. 60 for 60 or however many picks there are.
Chad's next idea for event management is running the draft.
Yes, there we go. Don't give this man any ideas.
No, that's the one part. I think I haven't been able to be a part of many of these kids' journeys yet because I'm new. But specifically for this past year, like Paolo, I'll never forget when we had the matchup of him playing Mike Foster in Arizona. I screwed up majorly And I still apologize to Daryl Hennings to this day. When I made the schedule, I didn't know it was their third game of the day playing Hillcrest and Mike Foster. And it was Paolo's first time playing back since quarantine. Still played great. But I was like, man, like that was a really good game. And Daryl was like, yeah, it's tough when it's your third game. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, wait, what? And he goes, yeah, this was our third game. I was like, no, like I literally ruined the best game by making this team play, their third game of the day. And I'll never forget that. That'll still haunt me.
Wow. E, real quick, man, let's go through some lists. You named some guys. We know Mike Foster. We know Jalen Williams. Like, give us a rundown, man. Like, talk to the audience about some of the guys that stepped through Mayhew's platform in this year's draft.
Yeah, I mean, right off the jump, first pick of the draft to the Magic, Paolo Banchero. I know personally the first time I saw Paolo was 7th grade nationals. So after his 7th grade year in Greensboro, and you could tell right away, like he was just different, super skilled, was already probably like 6'3", 6'4". You just knew that he was going to be on the radar as a national level type kid. It's just a matter of, how much bigger he gets, how much better he gets from that point. Obviously has the bloodline. So he's a kid who it's really been kind of a full circle moment. It's cool that we had, that matchup with Mike Foster, who ended up signing a free agent deal post-draft with the Sixers, which I'm excited about to see what he can do. Paulo was definitely, one of them that I've been around the longest, probably just in terms of the first time I've seen them. I thought, Chet came through the Slam Summer Classic. That was the first time I had a chance to see Chet live, which was that prior to his senior year, Rob?
Yeah, that was prior to his senior year. I actually I have a story about him too. I'll never forget. I was on the elevator for Slam, and like he walks in. So I'm like, what's up, man? And he looks at me, he's like, I like your shoes. And I was like, you want to wear them? But obviously I'm like a 10 and a half.
Keep going, talk to us. I know we talked about Paolo, and that's a unique story, man, within itself.
Again, it's like touch points with these guys of like, that's what I love about the draft is you think back to when you saw some of these guys to start. So like, obviously a guy like Shaedon Sharpe, who really blew up coming out of the pandemic at our Midwest Mania last year, where everybody was like, whoa, like this dude has a chance to be that guy. But Shaedon actually was at our high school academy camp after his freshman year, where like he didn't have very much fanfare at all. It was probably about 6'3", 6'4". It was very athletic. I remember that was one thing I noticed about him was like, man, this kid, pretty athletic wing and guard at that time, but just needed a lot, of skill development stuff, which you knew was going to come. But I'd be lying if I said I knew he was going to end up, a top 10 pick in the draft. That's crazy. His arc has been kind of crazy. Really a day one for me personally, and I think our staff, is Jalen Duren, who ended up, going lottery as well. Jalen has been one of our kids with team final since literally day one. I mean, he was with them in 7th grade. That was the first time I saw him. At that point, he was already a 6'4" man child. And by the time the end of his 8th grade year came around, he was already 6'8", chiseled. I mean, he had the tools that it was like, as long as he does his part, he's going to end up getting drafted, right? Like it takes a lot to screw that up, for lack of a better term. Like as long as he just stays the course, stays out of trouble. And I think now it's going to be, really fun to see, okay, what can he do? What's his fit going to be with the Pistons? What are they going to let him do offensively? Is he just going to be a lob threat and play his role? Because he can be high level with that role. But that's where the next part of the journey starts for a guy like Jalen, right? Where it's like, he's dreamed of being drafted forever, but now the real work is going to start. I mean, we had AJ Griffin, another kid who's been a prospect, big time prospect since 8th grade. When you saw the tools he had, he was already 6'4", 6'5". Now he has that marksman shooting ability, that elite level shooting ability that I think people are really counting on. Malachi Branham, the first time I saw Malachi, 8th grade, Made Hoops finale. Before I was even with Made Hoops, to be honest, he was playing with NEO True Game, a team out of Ohio. Mm-hmm. Looked the part as a scorer. Just a matter of, again, hey, this kid's going to be as good as he wants to be, and we'll see how long that goes. Wendell Moore Jr., another first-round pick. Wendell is another day one Made Hoops kid, was in the league the first year with Team CP3. was actually a kid as an 8th grader who was like elite, like top 3 in the country, was probably close to the size he is now, about 6'5", strong, very physically advanced. But the difference was he's always been young for the class, which did not look the part. I'm sure similar to the way it is now on social media. Back then, it was all the parents in the stands yelling reclass, when truthfully, he was probably 7th grade age eligible. He was a different breed, man. Like he's a guy who stayed the course, right? It hasn't been an easy road for him. After his first year at Duke, I know people were kind of wavering on who he would be. He stayed the course. And it's really awesome to see kind of that start to pay off. Andrew Nemhard, another guy drafted for us, Caleb Houston, who played in our 8th grade finale, Jalen Williams, Arkansas Jalen Williams, not Santa Clara Jalen Williams. He played with Woods Elite, was in our warm-up a few years back, and was part of a loaded team that they had. I mean, the list goes on and on. We had Jaden Hardy drafted, who I think is a guy that you could get some really good value on where he was picked at, right? Like coming out of high school before he did the G League Ignite, everyone was looking at him as like almost like another Jalen Green. And he spent this past year playing with grown men. And I think that that's really going to help him in the long run, whether people evaluated that correctly based on his competition versus what other guys his age were playing against. I think it was a big maturity year for him. And obviously he has the talent. There's no doubt about that. Kennedy Chandler, another kid I've been dealing with since he was a little tiny 7th grader. He's still one of the smallest guys in the mix, but man, he's super talented. Another guy who I think his value speaks for itself at that range in the draft. I think some people were scared about his size, but at the end of the day, like the kid has all heart, super talented, gets better every year. EJ Liddell, another guy who's been through the warm-up for us. You know, his resume speaks for itself with Ohio State and the career he's carved out, and he continues to get better. I think he's a guy that has a chance to really be good right off the jump, depending on what role he's given. Trevor Keel's another day one, shooter, big time shooter, physical guy. I mean, we talk about Trevor all the time, and Trevor actually spoke at our East Coast MSA camp, 4 weeks ago at this point. So he was dropping knowledge to these kids about what it's going to take for them to really get to the levels they want to get to. And now it's living proof. Like, hey, Trevor started here where you guys have started, and now he just got drafted. So continuing to just give game to these younger kids is a huge part of what we do. Trevor is living proof of that. So there's 15 of our guys basically that were drafted in total. I don't know how many of them I just ran through right there. I probably missed a few, but just to go back to what we were saying prior, I mean, it's one of those full circle nights where you celebrate the guys that you got to watch come up through this, right? And so many times people love to hate, and I think that's the appropriate word, take advantage and talk about, oh, I was his trainer from day one, and no, you weren't. This was the guy who, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's like, let's just celebrate these kids, man. Everybody had a part in their journeys, right? But from their coaches to their parents, to the guys that have trained them, to, teammates who gave them rides, everybody played a role at some point. So I like to just say, hey, it's awesome that these guys are getting to fulfill their dreams. Like McDonald's All-American selection night is one night I always love to see, because that's another huge moment for these kids. NBA draft night is obviously the Mecca. So I love celebrating the celebration of what these kids are trying to work towards. And I'm excited for next year. My expectation is the 2023 draft, 30 plus Made Hoops alumni. That's the goal for us, 30 plus.
Like Rob mentioned earlier, it's growing and growing, man. And then, like you said, on your Chad idea, Chad, run it one day.
Yeah, we don't need to give Chad those type of ideas, man. He'll be out here trying to scheme on a way to run the draft. And
60 plus, man. Listen, we can get 60 all-made kids. That'd be a good feat. But kudos to you, Eric. I want to give you your flowers in that, because, again, you've helped create this platform for these players to continue moving up, and then obviously getting the chance to play in college. And ultimately, if the cards stacked the right way, they'll have that chance to hear their names called on draft night, and then, or even get an opportunity to be a part of a franchise in the summer league, or be a two-way deal, however it may be. But nevertheless, pretty cool moment for us at Made, seeing these players who started their stories with us, man, now being able to go ahead and get that opportunity to play in the National Basketball Association.
Absolutely.
E, I appreciate you for tapping in with us again today for episode number 15. You and Rob both gave everyone a lot of great insight, not only into the month of June during the high school summer league periods, preparation for July, upcoming events in July, but also, like we just capped off, the NBA draft coverage. Anything from you, Mr. Hampford, on what you want to tell to the audience before we log off today?
I think keep working. That's always what I say, right? Like, it's a marathon. See what it is. If you're one of the younger guys in the stable right now, the middle schoolers coming up through, take notes from the guys above you, man, because they were in your shoes one day. Those dreams are possible. It's not easy, but nothing good ever comes easy, man. Nothing worth having, I guess, comes easy. So just understanding that you got to stay in the gym, keep your circle tight, keep good people around you, and be ready for your moment.
All facts, E. All facts. Everyone, thanks for tapping in to episode number 15 of the Made Hoops podcast. I'm Austin Smith. And for my brothers Eric Hampford and Rob Noonan, we are signing off today. We look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of the Made Hoops podcast.